Know what to eat, but find yourself not eating it. Perhaps you've been on diets and off again and just wonder why you can't stick to them. The Eating For You podcast, hosted by me, Sally Ann Pisk, will show you what's been missing so you can enjoy a healthier way of eating that lasts. Hi, Sally Ann with you, and we're going to be diving into a really common and frustrating, sometimes guilt-ridden habit, and that is mindless snacking. This habit might appear as I eat healthy all day, but then I just can't stop snacking at night. Or my meals are really healthy, it's just the snacks that are letting me down. So we're going to be exploring today why it is we snack when we're not hungry, whether snacks are harmful or helpful, and how to stop mindless snacking without giving up your favourite snacks altogether. And as always, I'll be approaching this from a mindfulness, non-diet approach to eating. So we'll be looking at how we can enjoy those foods without impacting our health and our weight, and also enhance our happiness. So why is it that we snack when we're not hungry? And there can be quite a few different reasons why this actually occurs, but I'm going to be covering the common ones today. The first one is emotional eating, and I need to say that this looks a little bit different for everyone as well. It could be due to stress, boredom, sadness. It even can be out of celebration and reward. I've worked with hundreds of ladies who have had an emotional or comfort eating habit. And as I said, it can arise for different reasons. When I look back at mine, the one that caused me to take action was to do with grief. And I literally had been comforting, filling that void with food after my brother died. But I've also realised since that comfort eating habits started much earlier in my life, but I had been totally unaware of them. A major one was during year 12. My mum used to give me, dare I say it, a whole box or a whole packet of Tim Tam biscuits. And if you don't know what a Tim Tam biscuit is, it's a chocolate biscuit that is covered with chocolate as well. So I didn't just have one or two while I was studying. I would eat the whole packet. And this went on basically for the whole of my year 12 studies. And Mum was kind of giving it to me as a treat, but also she thought it would be good for my energy. It probably didn't actually help my energy looking back. It actually made me feel quite sluggish, and I'm sure it didn't help me concentrate or retain any of the information I needed for the exams. But Mum's intention was in the right place, but I realised from that example and going back earlier into my childhood, food actually was used to soothe in many different ways. And it might be the case for you, but you just haven't had the time or thought to think about where has this habit actually come from. How we feel about our bodies, our body image, can be a trigger for snacking habits as well. And I recall a conversation with a very distressed client who said to me, Sally Ann, I just feel so uncomfortable and so ashamed at the moment. I don't want to look in the mirror. And if I do happen to glance at myself in the mirror, the next thing I know, I'm in the kitchen and I'm emptying the biscuit jar. She said, what's so frustrating is that me eating all of those biscuits is not helping me. It's actually making me feel worse. And as you tune in today, that's what I want you to do, is to think about the eating habits you have, especially the snacking habits, and really question whether they're supporting you or not. It is possible, especially when it comes to emotional eating habits, they came into being to help you through a challenging time, but maybe they have now reached their expiry date, and that's okay. We just need to work out what is going to help you break those habits. And I have a really useful checklist, the Emotional Eating Triggers Checklist, and I will leave a link to that so you can download it with this episode's notes. And that will get you started thinking about, well, is there something that's emotionally driving me to snack when I'm not hungry. Snacking can also be triggered by what's happening around us, and we tend to call those environmental cues. It could be a time of the day, it could be a certain place, or it could just be a random experience of walking past a bakery, smelling that wonderful fresh baked food, whether it's bread, whether it's cakes or pastries, that actually lure you inside that shop to actually buy food when you're not hungry. And for me, it's walking past one of my favourite bakeries in Katoomba, and I just smell that delicious sourdough bread, and I have to go in there and buy some. And as I'm sharing this with you, it's just so powerful that, my salivary glands are getting ready in anticipation of a mouthful of that beautiful crusty sourdough bread in my mouth. So yes, we are attracted to certain foods that we enjoy and we find pleasurable. That's not a problem. The problem arises if we feel that we don't have control over that urge to eat when those wafting aromas cause us to eat and we don't really want to. Other triggers that can develop over time is like turning on the TV in the evening. And you may have at some stage decided, I might have some potato crisps or some chocolate while I'm watching TV. And if this happens over a period of time, then it becomes a habit. It's nearly like as soon as the TV is turned on, you find yourself in the kitchen getting your bowl of crisps or your packet of crisps and your bar of chocolate. So it becomes like an association, and that really is a mindless eating habit that can be broken, but we have to have the awareness first of why we're eating, or even going back a step, that we're actually eating while we're watching TV, because we don't pay attention to eating when we're distracted by something else. So you may not even realize some of this nighttime snacking. And that was certainly a case for one of my clients, Janice. She said to me, I knew nighttime eating was a problem for me, Sally Ann, but it wasn't until I went through the mindfulness program I realized the extent of that habit and how much food I was actually eating in the evenings. And she said, now that I'm not doing that, I'm feeling much better and I can actually sleep better because I'm not so uncomfortably full when it's time to go to bed. Another personal example of this, I remember when I was a new graduate dietitian and I was out in Orange, central west of New South Wales, and the other team members that I worked with in the community health team, they would often bring in these amazing home-baked biscuits and cakes. And just within around 6 weeks, I could feel my clothes getting tighter just from that regular morning tea. So these kind of habits just sneak up on us when we're not mindful. And of course, when I was a new graduate dietitian, I was not practiced in mindful eating. And I'm by no means suggesting that we should never enjoy homemade baked goods, but mindfulness is key, not only for our enjoyment of that food, but making sure that we just eat enough so it is pleasurable and it's not making us uncomfortably full. So now when we look at another trigger for snacking, it could be more of a habit, a time of the day where you've got used of eating. And a common one that I find for many ladies who work, they come home in the evenings and go into the kitchen and get something to eat. And again, a little bit like our TV watching, it becomes a habit. We walk in the door, we go into the kitchen, we make ourselves a snack before we start preparing the evening meal or eating the evening meal, if you're fortunate to have someone prepare that for you. So I know for Karen, it was a really frustrating habit for her because she wasn't sure whether she was hungry or not. She really felt as we got into the mindfulness practices that sometimes she ate when she got home from work because she was hungry, but then sometimes she felt that she just ate out of habit. So what we did was actually look at the timing of her lunch, what she was eating for lunch, Also, she tended to have a long break between her lunch and evening meal, and making sure that she could be confidently distinguishing between non-hunger eating and actual hunger when she got home from work. And of course, what we were trying to do was make sure what she had eaten early in the day actually sustained her through to the evening meal. So with her mindfulness practices, Karen can now distinguish the difference between true hunger and non-hunger eating, and makes modifications to make sure she can sustain herself to the next meal as much as possible. And sometimes we do need to have something between meals, and I'm going to talk about that very soon. And sometimes our snacking habits can actually be caused by a rebellion, if you like, against that restriction that has been placed on us by ourselves, by others, perhaps different fad diets that we've followed. Because that all or nothing approach to eating, or having those lists of good and bad foods, can actually create a spiral in our eating. It can actually trigger emotional eating habits as well. And I know Judy shared in her first podcast with us that by removing those labels of good and bad foods, it gave her permission to eat anything she wanted based on her level of hunger and what she felt like eating in the moment. Because for Judy and many ladies that I work with, once you eat a forbidden food, whether it be chocolate cake, biscuits, potato crisps, the diet mentality is, well, eat it all up now and then I can get back on track tomorrow. But that whole cycle becomes like Groundhog Day, where every morning you get up and say, I'm not going to eat the cake, I'm not going to eat the biscuits, I'm not going to eat the chips. But as soon as you do, you then spiral down into, I'll eat it all today and get back on track tomorrow. So being aware of any labels or restrictions that you're placing on yourself and food can be very enlightening as to why you may have a snacking habit. And this desire for sweet foods particularly can come from any restriction you have experienced over your childhood. For one of my clients, Gale, who has also shared on the Eating For You podcast, that sweets were not something that were in her house, and she would have them at birthday parties, maybe special occasions. So when she started working, she wanted to eat more of these sweet foods because she really liked them. But there was also that drive to eat them because she could. She had choice over what she ate. Of course, for Gale back then, she also wasn't eating mindfully, so can now see that it really started her addiction, as she calls it, to eating sweet foods. But once we understand what these triggers are, where they've come from, and to just compassionately assess whether they're working for us or not, we can actually ditch them and move on to other ways of eating and other ways to soothe our stress that doesn't have anything to do with food. So next time you go to reach for a snack, I encourage you just to pause and ask yourself whether you're actually hungry or you're eating for other reasons. And as I've mentioned, sometimes we don't know if we're hungry. And that's where our mindfulness programs are really beneficial in supporting you to become an expert in your own body and mind, so you can nourish yourself in the moment like Judy and all the other ladies. If you want to have something sweet, that's okay. If you want to have some vegetable soup, that's okay. So just reach out. I'll leave a link to my calendar to book a call. The Mindful Eating Strategy call is all about understanding what your eating habits are and how I can best support you. And if I can't help you, I will do my best to refer you on to someone who can. Just before we move on to that $1 million question about whether snacking is good or bad, I want to mention a couple of other ways that snacking habits can arise. Skipping meals is a big one, because what tends to happen is we eat whatever's on hand because we're hungry. We tend to go for the high fat, high sugar foods because our body's telling us you are hungry and you need to eat. The other habit that we probably don't always consider as snacking is grazing. So if you find you're eating regularly, then it may be that that grazing that's happening is in addition to the food and the nutrients and the energy that you're getting from your main meals. And that can make it really difficult because you're never ever really physically hungry, but you're never truly satisfied either with a grazing habit because we don't allow ourselves to get hungry, so we can't actually recognize satiety because we're kind of in this grey area of neither hungry or full or satisfied at any moment of the day. One other thing that popped into my mind this morning as I was reflecting on today's episode is that snacking can be a seasonal habit as well. And ladies who work with me in our coaching programs were really reassured when we talked about how when the cooler weather hits winter, that we might find ourselves in the kitchen looking for food more often. And it's just a sign that you're feeling a bit cold. You need to, put a little bit more clothing on or make sure, the heating's on. And I found myself this year when winter hit, because it came really suddenly, that I was kind of in the kitchen at weird times of the day that I don't normally feel hungry or I'm looking for food. And then I realized I actually felt a bit cold. So being aware of our changes to our eating can also make us aware of changes in the seasons, and of course also a lack of sleep can lead us to want a snack on high fat and sugar foods. So I recall many of my book talks that I did nearly 10 years ago, or within the last 7 to 10 years. Ladies would come up to me after the talk and say, Sally Ann, I realise part of my eating problems is that I'm not sleeping well. So if sleep's a bit of an issue for you, then I really do suggest you go back and listen to our episodes with Rosemary Clancy, a psychologist who specialises in sleep. So moving on to that $1,000,000 question, is snacking a bad habit? Well, from a mindfulness perspective, I think you know what my answer is going to be. Snacking can be a really healthy and nourishing part of the way that we eat. But of course, it depends on why we're snacking and what we choose to eat and the amounts that we choose to eat, because we don't want snacks to actually impact on our level of hunger so that we're not actually hungry when it comes to our main meal times. And snacking can actually be recommended for some people, especially if you have medical reasons to eat between meals. And of course, for some people, because of their medication regime for diabetes, may need to have some snacks between meals. The other area of health that often requires smaller meals is digestive issues, whether that be irritable bowel syndrome or perhaps reflux. We look at having more smaller but more regular meals to assist in reducing the symptoms of both irritable bowel syndrome and reflux. There could also be medications that need to be taken with food at different times of the day. So you may need to eat, say at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, to take your afternoon medication. But that aside, most of us can do very well on 3 meals a day. So snacking is not necessarily essential for good health, but it may support us. And as I mentioned earlier, if there is a large gap, say between your lunch and your evening meal, then a mid-afternoon snack would make a lot of sense to help you get through the afternoon. But just like Karen did and a lot of ladies that I work with, they find by increasing how much they eat at lunchtime, they have more energy for the afternoon and they're less likely to want to reach for a sweet snack around 3 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And if you participate in quite strenuous exercise, then you might find, having a snack before or after the exercise is really beneficial. I know since I have started my neuro program for my bone density, that I do feel hungrier on the days that I'm lifting weights, and I just make sure that I have a larger meal. I don't tend to find that I need a snack, but depending on the time of the day of your exercise and perhaps where you are, then having some snacks with you might be a really good idea. So you're not feeling fatigued, you're not feeling tired, and not tempted then to go for really high fat, high sugar foods when something else might actually be more satisfying. So, what is a healthy snack? If we look at it from a nutritional point of view, what I'm going to recommend is not going to surprise you. We're looking at something that's going to give you some protein, potentially some fibre, and some healthy fats, because these nutrients together sustain our energy. They make us feel physically satisfied and keep our energy levels up throughout the day. So I'm into really simple snacks. It could be some nuts and some dried fruit. It could be some hummus and vegetable sticks or some wholemeal crackers. Maybe a boiled egg with a cracker if you like eggs. Tasty cheese and crackers is often one that I have when I'm travelling. Another one that's become a bit of a favourite for ladies in our community is having some tasty cheese with a date. A really interesting blend of some fats, some sweetness, but also some saltiness. So that's an interesting one to try if you find yourself hungry and needing something to sustain you between meals. A milk-based drink is regarded a snack. So if you have a coffee made on milk, say midway between breakfast and lunch, that's kind of like a snack because of the protein and the fats you're getting from the milk. That's going to help sustain you even longer. A great one for summertime is some plain yogurt with fresh fruit, and especially in the berry seasons. I love having my raspberries with some yogurt. It's something that I really, really savour. But I think when it comes to snacking, as I said, be really mindful of how much you're having, because you don't want to overeat, then not feel like eating. And that's what ladies say to me, and that's the frustrating part, is that I have the snacks, but I have the main meals as well. And it nearly fits into that grazing category that I was talking about earlier, where you never actually feel truly hungry or satisfied. So it becomes really difficult to read those internal body cues of hunger and satiety, which are there to guide us to choose how much we need to eat at any time. I think the other guideline, I won't call it a rule because it is actually based on biological reasons, is that we know from understanding how our digestive system works, it actually needs a break. Our gut needs a break. It doesn't like us grazing, it doesn't like us snacking all the time. So what the research shows is that in order for the gut to complete its self-clean, yes, the gut has a process called the migrating motor complex, which actually cleans and cleanses the gut between us eating. We need to have 2 hours between eating. So that would even include having your milk coffee in the morning. So if you're having breakfast at 8 o'clock, then you wouldn't be looking at having your milk coffee till say 10:30. So you've given your body a chance to rest and the gut to do its cleaning process. And I just want to emphasize that this migrating motor complex, this chemical and mechanical clean of the gut, is actually essential. What it does is move food and byproducts from the stomach to the end of the digestive tract. So just keep that in mind as a bit of a guideline. If you're finding that you're hungry, say an hour after lunch, then it might be time to seek out some support to make sure what you're eating at lunchtime is truly going to sustain you for the afternoon. However, if you find that you're looking for food an hour after lunch but you're not hungry, that's also a good reason to reach out for support, and that link to my mindful eating strategy call will be with this episode's notes. So if you're kind of thinking, I really don't know how to fix this snacking habit, it's really frustrating me, it's really creating a lot of unnecessary turmoil in my head and probably in your heart, then do book in and have a call. But what I want to emphasize that part of natural healthy eating is to snack. There's a difference between feeling like a square of chocolate with your cup of tea because you just want something sweet to feeling compelled to eat the whole chocolate bar. There's also a difference between feeling like you have to eat a certain food every day, whether it's that bag of crisps, whether it's the chocolate bar or the favourite cookies in the jar or the ice cream, whatever it is. If you feel like you have no control over eating that food, then snacking has become an unhealthy and unhelpful habit for you. So it is all about being mindful. And my tips to stop mindless snacking, of course, is the flip side, and that is to become more mindful. So eating without distraction, it's kind of like so obvious, but also so difficult. It's not unusual when ladies join one of my coaching programs. The first couple of weeks, they become even more frustrated because they realize how mindless they have got with their eating, but a lot of other things that just happen on autopilot in their life. So the first thing is to take notice when you eat. Be curious. That's a really powerful part of mindfulness. It's a really non-judgmental part of mindfulness. It allows you just to observe what's happening. What are your triggers? Is it emotional eating? Perhaps you are hungry. Maybe it's just a habit that's got set up and you didn't even know that you had that habit, and you may not know why. Finding out the why of eating can be really helpful because it allows you to then reassess whether that habit serves you anymore, what the best strategy is going to be to overcome that habit. I think it's also important to create some structure. Our gut loves to have some routine around eating. Not that we need to eat exactly the same amount every day, but when we look at our 24-hour body clock, we know the best time to eat and digest food is in the first half of the day. That's what really supports our body the most. So it's about having regular meals, not grazing. And it's including balanced snacks if you're having a large gap between meals. And I find that can be really useful, especially when I'm traveling and I know I'm not going to be able to get something that I find nourishing while I'm driving. And so by balanced, I'm talking about it gives you some protein, some fiber potentially, and also some healthy fats, because that's what will sustain your energy and make you feel satisfied. And I think from Judy's example and from many of the stories I hear from ladies, as much as possible, trying to let go of that all or nothing attitude to eating. And if you do have a snack that you have in the past considered a bad food or a forbidden food, not feeling like you've blown it. As much as you can, eat mindfully and really try to become more aware of why you want to eat that food in the first place. And that will also let go of some of that judgment and blame that you may be applying to yourself at the moment. And be assured, a mindless snacking habit is not about you. It's part of our culture. Mindlessness is part of everyday life for most people. I'm not saying that's the best way to live our life or to eat, but it's a pattern, and we tend to just adopt patterns that we've grown up with or what we observe around us with our friends, our families, our workplaces. So just go very kindly and gently with yourself as you really look into best way to overcome and stop this mindless eating. So I've mentioned quite a few resources that you can access today. I've mentioned a few past podcast episodes, so I'll make sure they're listed in the note. I'll also leave a link to my calendar if you're really ready to break this snacking habit and get that balance of being able to enjoy all foods but not feel like snacking is sabotaging your goals for health or weight. I'll also leave the link for the emotional eating triggers checklist, because that will help you understand some of the non-hunger drivers for eating, which is really important because that gives you an understanding and an appreciation of why these habits develop in the first place and why they continue. But of course, I also talk about in that checklist how you can stop those habits. Anytime, if you feel like an individual consultation is the best way to start unpacking and managing the transformation from snacking to mindful eating, then you have the opportunity to book in for an individual consultation. And I'll leave that information in this episode's notes as well. So thanks for listening. And if you have found this episode really beneficial, then share it with a friend who may also get some benefit from what we've shared. Leave us a review. That's always great, so more people find out about the Eating for You podcast. This is the final episode for Series 4, and I'll be returning for Series 5 in Healthy Bones Week, which is August 25th. And I'm really looking forward to a conversation with Professor Belinda Beck, who has played an instrumental role in the Anero Bone program. And that is the program that helps us to rebuild bone once we have osteopenia or osteoporosis. But we're also going to be discussing the best ways to retain our bone density, but also what's required when we're replacing bone that has been lost. So a really valuable episode, no matter your age, because we'll be giving you tips on bone health throughout our life. So in this short break, take the opportunity to re-listen to your favourite episodes or catch up on episodes that you have missed. And please feel free to email me any questions that you would love me to answer in the Eating for You podcast. So I'll leave a link to my contact page so you can easily reach me that way. I look forward to sharing with you again Series 5 starting on August 25th. If you would love to keep up to date with other tips and strategies for mindful eating and living, then make sure you're receiving our weekly nourishment newsletter. So another resource for this week, the link to register to receive this email is included with this episode's notes. You have been listening to the Eating for You podcast with Sally Ann Pisk. If you are looking for additional support to enjoy a lifelong way of healthier eating, then join me in a free 30-minute call to see if our approach is right for you. I have included the link to book an obligation-free call in this episode's notes.